Hey everybody, it's Mike here from The Art of Guitar. I'm here with another concert review. I just did the one on Pantera with their surprise show at First Avenue, but this is going to be about the Metallica concert at US Bank Stadium. It was a 2-day concert, and the funny thing is when I bought tickets, I thought I was only buying tickets for the first concert. So when I looked closer at the ticket and I saw that it said both days, I freaked out. I decided to ask my friend Christopher if he wanted to go to the first show, and then I asked my nephew if he wanted to go to the second show, but he would have to fly in from out of town, and he was totally cool doing that. I've seen Metallica about 5 times now. The first time was way back in 91 or 92 when they had the Black Album tour. But this one was going to be different because for this one I bought Snake Pit tickets, which means we're going to be right inside the stage. Seeing the Black Album tour really changed the trajectory of my life. I knew right then and there that I really wanted to pursue guitar for the rest of my life. And it was really great because my teenage metal band at the time were all at the concert together. We all sat next to each other in a row and we all were equally as impacted by this concert. And that's what made this concert so exciting because in addition to Christopher and I going, Corey and Al were going with us as well. So it was the entire Sanctus band having a reunion at a Metallica concert. The show started at 6. So the first band was going to be Mammoth, and that's Eddie Van Halen's son's band, so Wolfgang Van Halen's band. And after Mammoth, it was Pantera. And the crazy part is Christopher and I had already watched Pantera the day before at First Avenue when they did their secret club date. And like I said, the concert was at US Bank Stadium, and that place is such a, speaking of Mammoth, a mammoth-sized place. When you look at it, it looks like an evil Empire ship from Star Wars or something. And the last concert I actually saw there was Taylor Swift because I brought my ex-girlfriend to see her. And before that, it was Metallica again when they were one of the first acts to actually play US Bank Stadium. So this is going to be a lot different though because at that concert, they did not have the round stage and we were sitting way far back. We had to stand in multiple lines. The first one was just to get through the security checks, so the metal detectors and all that. And, I just kind of looked around and took in the whole atmosphere, and everybody just seemed really buzzed and excited for the show, obviously. And there were some interesting graphic t-shirts as well. Speaking of t-shirts, Christopher actually wore his Pantera shirt from the night before because they were selling a one-time t-shirt for that particular gig. And I saw a lot of other Pantera shirts there as well. So a lot of people went to both concerts. After we got through the first couple lines, we had to go get our wristbands so that we could get in the special Snake Pit section. But part of me was kind of wishing we had laminates instead because ever since I saw Wayne's World, I think it was Wayne's World 2, when they're going around and they're showing everybody their pass, this feels way cooler to do this than to like show somebody your wrist for some reason. Now get this. So many people want Metallica merch that they actually opened a store nearby US Bank Stadium where they sold their merchandise, I think a few days before the concert even happened. And then outside of the stadium, they had these buses set up where they're selling merchandise as well. We underestimated the time it would take to get to the stadium and actually get through the lines and everything. So by the time we got inside, Mammoth was already starting up. And we're walking around and I could hear the band going, but they sounded like a distant echo. And they gave me flashbacks of when we saw Guns N' Roses and Metallica back in the day, and they played the Metrodome in Minnesota. And it sounded like that the entire time, like they were playing in this gigantic canyon. But I knew the closer we got to the stage, obviously, the better it was going to sound. And I knew where we were going to end up, so I wasn't worried. So if you've ever been to US Bank Stadium, you probably know that it's like a maze sometimes. You get caught up in these weird hallways. So I felt like we were trapped in this weird liminal spaces, like the back rooms kind of thing. And it was kind of like a nightmare because I could hear the band playing, but we just couldn't find our way to the floor. So we eventually found our way to the lower level, and then we walked down a ton of stairs to get down to the very bottom. But by the time we actually got to the floor, Mammoth was done with their set. So really, I only got to hear them from a distance and take a couple pictures, but that's about it. It felt really cool to get to the floor of US Bank Stadium, and they actually had it covered with these weird puzzle gray plastic mats. And it was great because it relieved your feet a little bit. I knew I was going to be standing quite a bit this entire weekend. So these puzzle mats offered a little bit of cushion. But later on, I would find out that it would actually be sort of a detrimental thing because a lot of the bands, especially Metallica, were throwing out picks. And I think a lot of them got stuck in the crevices of these puzzle mats. I looked up and I was just in awe of these cylindrical towers that they put up. I think there were 8 of them total. And they had the graphics, the screens on them, but they were like a 360 so everybody could see them. Everything was made for gigantic stadiums. And you could see that they were lined with lights. And later on, we'd find out that there was a hidden surprise in every single one of them. But we'll get to that eventually. That's my cliffhanger, by the way. Chris and I were now in the Snake Pit, looking around, seeing these awesome drum sets that were set up for Pantera. And like I talked about in the Pantera video, by the way, check that out if you want. There's a lot of of crazy things that happened at that show. I could finally see up close the pictures of Dimebag and Vinny on the kick drums, of Charlie's kick drums. And that's where I saw that the other two kick drums that had the Cowboys from Hell logo on them were like fake kick drums. They were really shallow looking, almost like V drums. So the snake pit was a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. I was worried that they were going to shove us all together and then lock a gate and trap us in. And I thought, man, what if I have to go to the bathroom? What if I just want to leave for a little bit? But it wasn't like that at all. There were these two huge escape areas where you could easily walk out. Sometimes they would bar one side because that's where the band would enter from, I guess. I found that out later. But for the most part, it was wide open, and it was never to the point where I felt really constricted like I did at the First Avenue concert with Pantera. I felt like I could easily breathe and have enough space. So Chris and I walked to the edge closer to one of the drum sets. We just had to kind of guess which one they were going to start on. And we chose the wrong one because suddenly Pantera came out almost as if out of nowhere, like out of the floor or something. I didn't see where they were coming from. And I saw, the band members come up. I saw Zakk Wylde. He was towering in front of me like the Viking that he is. And Charlie sat down on the other drum set. So Chris and I had to walk to the other side and try to not really fight our way because everybody was pretty chill. But we tried to get as close as possible because I really wanted to hear up close and personal. They played the same intro that they did when they played First Ave, and it was just a clip from, I think, the Vulgar videos. And the crowd was going crazy because, like I said in the other video, they were showing early footage of Dimebag and Vinny and the whole band, actually. So it was cool to see that. They started off again with a new level. And it's kind of crazy because they ended up playing the exact set list from the night before. So everybody who was wearing a Pantera shirt already kind of knew what to expect. The big difference, though, was that now Pantera was surrounding us instead of being just in front of us. And now most of us were close enough to the band members to where, if Phil Anselmo wanted to spit on somebody, he could. It was a pretty stark contrast in sound from the night before to what we were hearing in the pit because it wasn't that loud in the pit, to tell you the truth. And Pantera is one of those bands that you really need to feel their power. You need to feel the kick drum and the guitars just ripping your face off. But being in the middle, it seemed like we were in sort of a vacuum. All the PA speakers that were surrounding us were pointing outward to everybody else. Each tower had one speaker facing inward, so we heard that, but there really wasn't any power to it. So I feel like that's something they overlooked a little bit, that the pit people weren't going to have the best mix. We also weren't getting much stage volume because they were using in-ear monitors. So a lot of the time, all I could really hear the most was Charlie's drums. And that was a little bit distracting because even though I love all the Pantera drumming, when you can't hear really anything else besides that, it's just not the same, obviously. The circular setup is really cool, and it allows for a lot of people in the stadium to see the band up close every once in a while. But when you're in the middle, it's kind of strange because you feel like your head is always on a swivel and you're not sure who to look at. So I'd stare at Rex for like a minute and all of a sudden I'd hear Zakk Wylde starting to solo. So I'd be like, where is he? And he's like way over on the other side and he's not even facing me. So that got a little bit strange. I kind of felt like Linda Blair in The Exorcist, like constantly turning my head to try to figure out where the action was. I'd mostly try to follow Phil and Zach, and Phil walked up right up in front of us one time and he had this little station where he had this kind of table thing set up with waters and throat sprays. And I laughed because I thought, old school Phil would have never had anything like that. He would have just knocked it over or something. And I think he felt a little silly doing that in front of us. So he started making fun of himself and spraying his armpits and stuff. So he still had a sense of humor about it. After about 4 tunes, I decided to check out the general admission area. Because we had these wristbands, you could go anywhere you wanted to, basically. So I walked out and suddenly I could feel and hear the kick drum. I could hear and feel the guitar. And I'm like, man, general admission is the place to be to really get the full sound. Visually, the Snake Pit is the place to be, but man, if I could have traded my tickets for general admission tickets, I really wouldn't be that bummed out after I experienced both sides. After exploring around a little bit, I found like this secret merch area where there was no line. And that was really rare because, I already talked about all the merch areas all around the place, even outside, and they were all totally filled up. So when I found this one booth with nobody actually waiting, I thought, this is crazy. This is like special, like VIP treatment. I figured this is how the other half lives, I guess. So I went up and I took my time and I found this shirt. I thought it looked the most badass. Here's the back of it, by the way. Once again, it says the exact date of the show. So between this and the Pantera shirt, I feel pretty special because these are, one-of-a-kind shirts for that particular date. Not only was the merch table not busy, the bathrooms weren't busy. So I could take my time and I was like, man, I could get used to this. When I finally got back to the Snake Pit, I told my friend Chris how great it sounded out in general admission. So he's like, we got to go there, because he's a sound engineer and he runs live sound all the time. So we went out and he couldn't believe it either. He's like, this is like night and day. Right about then, they kicked into their last song, Cowboys from Hell, and they did all the strobe lights like they do all the time whenever they play that song. And I thought, okay, this is cool. The whole crowd was going nuts. You know, everybody loves Cowboys from Hell. But I thought, I think they have one more song after this if they did what they did the night before and played an encore. But after they played Cowboys from Hell, that was it. They did not kick into Tomorrow Don't Mean Shit. That's the song they played as an encore the night before. Turns out no matter how popular you are, if you're opening for Metallica, you got to keep it tight. You got to keep on schedule. So I believe that's why they didn't play that encore, even though I would have loved to hear it. Now, the applause that they got after Cowboys from Hell was so insane that you would have thought that Pantera was headlining. It's always weird to me when bands play stadiums and it's still daylight out and the sun's shining through the windows, and US Bank has all these windows in the ceiling. So Pantera basically played in the light. And so you never really get that full concert experience. You don't get to see all the stage production that only comes alive in the dark. I knew Metallica was going to take their time coming out, so I thought by the time they come out, it's going to be dark and we're going to get the full effect of the stage lighting. So Chris and I walked around a little bit, got something to drink, went to the bathroom, got something to eat. I stretched my legs out a little bit, and we actually ran into some more subscribers, which is cool. I had a pocket full of Ardo guitar picks, so everybody I met, I would give them a guitar pick. We'd take a picture. It was a lot of fun. We got back to the snake pit, and I realized how cool I felt walking through the little tunnel into the snake pit area. It felt like I was walking in a movie, almost like in slow motion or something. And we were really feeling that anticipation to see Metallica. Suddenly something whooshed by my head. I look up and it's this camera that they have on 4 cables. It was able to go all around the stadium and film anywhere. So it was one of those live action football cameras, and I wasn't used to seeing one of those, so it kind of freaked me out when it went by. I thought it was a drone at first. Metallica really knows how to squeeze every ounce of anticipation out of their fans, so they took a long time to come out. Like I said, the sun finally went down. Pantera ended around 8 o'clock. My friend thought they were going to start at 8:30, which would make sense. But part of me thought, you know what? I think they're going to wait till 9 o'clock. And I ended up being right. So they started at 9 o'clock. But the weird part was I didn't see Lars's drum set. I looked all around and I just did not see a drum kit. So my friend Chris is like, I bet you it's going to pop out of the stage. And I thought, well, it better happen soon because the intro music's about to start up. And next thing I knew, Chris was like, oh, there it is. And it already had popped out of the stage. Later, I would see it come up in other parts of the stage. I think it was another drum set, so he had at least 2. But it came up pretty quick. It wasn't like this slow reveal. It was like, boop, there's the drum kit. It was pretty impressive, actually. And there it was, Lars's drum kit, bright yellow. I still don't know how I feel about that color for Metallica. I always think of the band Striper. Now, just like that camera that whooshed by my head, all of a sudden I hear this huge crashing and whooshing sound happen. It was like this gigantic sound effect. Right afterwards, the lights went down a little bit, and AC/DC's It's a Long Way to the Top If You Want to Rock and Roll started playing. And the whole crowd started getting excited. It felt like the beginning of like a football game or something. Everybody's clapping and smiling, and you know, I was ready for the concert. And just like always, Metallica started up the good, the bad, and the ugly with the video, and that never gets old to me. For some reason, just that intro song is so epic. And it always signifies that you're about to see something even more epic afterwards. So I was getting the chills. That intro song just gives me the goosebumps every single time. I started to live stream and I asked Chris what he thought they were going to start with. For some reason, I thought Creeping Death. Now, just like Pantera, Metallica came out from nowhere. Now that I watch some videos, I see that they're on the outer side of the stage and they come up these stairs. But from my vantage point, it looked like they just came out from, you know, the stage, kind of like the drum kit did. There was Lars Ulrich. He turns around and he's like screaming at people, and his eyes are wide open, and he looked a lot like if you watch MMA, sometimes the fighters do a really severe weight cut and their eyes kind of get hollowed out a little bit. So Lars kind of looked like that. He looked like a man possessed. Creeping Death was great, but I was busy live streaming. You know, I kind of have to walk the line between recording things for my review videos and being present and actually watching the concert. So in the beginning, you know, after live streaming, I realized I really wasn't taking in the concert, you know, live. So I put the phone down a little bit and I really took in a lot of Harvester of Sorrow, which was their next song. Then they played Hit the Lights, which was a huge surprise. You know, it was the first song on Kill 'Em All, their first official album. So I thought that was pretty cool that they went all the way back in time to play that tune. Then they kicked into King Nothing. And everything that's off load, I get a weird feeling when I hear it because it was such a bad time in my life when that song came out, when that album came out in 96. Now, I talked about how Pantera didn't sound super powerful in the pit area because of the speaker situation. For some reason though, Metallica sounded pretty good. It still wasn't kicking me in the chest, and I couldn't really feel the pop of Lars' snare drum, which is such a huge part of his sound. I would hear their full mix later when I left the pit area once again, but it was sounding pretty good where we were standing. I think that's because Metallica's volume is just so much louder than their opening acts. That's just a Metallica thing. I really noticed that when we saw the first time at US Bank Stadium. Avenged Sevenfold sounded half as loud as Metallica. I kept joking to my friend that I can picture Lars Ulrich going back to the soundboard and just like secretly bringing down the volume, you know? So being the audio geeks that we are, Christopher and I decided to leave the pit once again to hear the full mix. And it was weird because as soon as we walked out of the pit area, we realized that we were right next to a mosh pit. Inside the snake pit area, nobody was moshing. I think it's because a lot of people spent a lot of money for their tickets. They didn't want to get in trouble or get thrown out. And just people had a more calm, laid back demeanor in the pit, ironically, in the snake pit area. But once you got outside of it, I saw a circle pit happening, and standing right in the middle of the pit was my ex-girlfriend's brother. I thought that was kind of funny. They were moshing at this particular point to the song 72 Seasons. And I have to admit, I listened to the album 72 Seasons a few times, and then I kind of just abandoned it. I liked a few of the tracks, but I didn't really stick with it like I do the other Metallica albums. But I got a new excitement for the song after seeing so many people having fun and moshing to it. So sometimes that'll happen. You don't really catch on to a song, but once you hear it live in under different circumstances, it could definitely change your mind about it. We went back to the pit area, and I actually started to get a little bit tired. I must have lost my adrenaline for a while because I felt like I was, kind of just dragging a little bit. And that's when the show slowed down. They had Rob and Kirk do their thing together again, and this time they made up a song. I forgot what it was called, like Purple #1 Pride or something. And it was just like this jam thing that they did. And then they kicked into songs like Fade to Black and Shadows Follow, and then they played Orion and Nothing Else Matters. So it was kind of this lull. Even though I love those songs, it just brought me to this place where I was gonna take a breather and relax a little bit because I knew they were gonna end strong. One real special moment that I remember was when James and Kirk were playing the bend part of Orion together. And there's just this magic with that real slow bend part that kind of sounds like a slow siren. They played that live together, and it was really cool to see them standing next to each other, and I captured a little bit of it. Then when they kicked into Nothing Else Matters, Kirk does the intro, and he's been known to mess up the intro sometimes, so I made sure to record at least part of it. He has a good sense of humor about it. If he messes up, he'll just start over and laugh it off. Now, even though Kirk got a little tripped up on a few little sections of that intro, it did not stop him. He just kept plowing forward and ended up being just fine. After that slight lull where I felt like I was losing some energy, it all came shooting back the moment they kicked into Sad But True. I was instantly teleported back to 91 when we were all at the Black Album tour, and that energy came right back to us. Then they kicked into Blackened, and that sealed the deal for me. I was feeling it. Blackened was incredible. It's one of my favorite Metallica songs, if not my favorite. And I love the middle breakdown part. It's always super groovy. But one thing I'm bummed about is they, for some reason, just cut out one of my favorite parts of the song, and that's where the beat changes after the solo. Not sure why they cut that out. Maybe it's too weird to pull off live, but I really do miss it every time they skip it. Oh, I forgot. During Sad But True, Robert stepped onto this platform, and he started to move like he was surfing or floating across the audience. And what it was this platform, and this guy was pushing it like a giant shopping cart. And Rob was just up there playing the whole time, and then when they got to the other side, he jumped off back onto the stage. James went up on one of the platforms and started playing this instrumental thing real quick, and then he kicks into Fuel. And suddenly, this explosion of fire lights up all around us, and it feels like everything shoots up like 90 degrees suddenly. Of course, that's the perfect song to have pyro to, but man, feeling the heat of those blazing flames freaked me out because I thought, how are they withstanding that? They're super close to it. They weren't done yet. Even though it felt like they were on stage for quite a while, they ended up playing about 15 tunes. They kick into Seek and Destroy, and more surprises happen. You know those big cylindrical towers? Well, I guess I didn't see it happen, but these huge balls fell out from all of them. Like the bottom opened up or something, all of a sudden these huge beach balls fall. Usually when you go to a concert and there's a bunch of beach balls, people just hit them and it's a fun little friendly thing. But these things were gigantic. They were huge. I would guess that they were maybe like 5 feet tall or something. And they were really heavy. So as they came towards us, I didn't know what to expect. So I kind of did the double fist like that, and it basically pushed me back a little bit. And they just caused chaos. I look up and all of a sudden one of the balls hit Lars Ulrich's drum kit, and some of the microphones, the overheads, were getting knocked over, and this tech had to come out and fix everything, and he was just in a frenzy. You know, he was both trying to fix things and keep other balls from smacking the kit.
Because I'm gonna put my nutsack on your drum set.
And Lars comes out and he's like talking to the audience a little bit, and all of a sudden one of the balls hits him out of nowhere. It was one of the funniest things I ever saw. So thanks to Chris for capturing that. He sent me the footage for that one. And this is a band that knows how to end big. They ended with Master of Puppets. People were going crazy in the stands. The balls were still floating around and bouncing off people, and the people next to me actually grabbed one of them and smothered it and took all the air out, and this guy like folded it up and he kept it near him like he was just gonna run out with it, and he looked so happy to have one of Metallica's balls. At the very end, I almost died laughing. I'm so sad I didn't capture this, but James walked right in front of one of those huge beach balls, and he picked it up, and he saw Lars was facing away from him. Lars was just yelling at the crowd or whatever he always does, and James pushes the ball into Lars and almost knocks him off the stage. Because like I said, these balls had some weight to them. So Lars kind of had to catch himself, and he turns around, and I did capture what happens next. It was almost like two brothers fighting. They tossed out cups full of picks. So on the side of the stage, they had these plastic cups, and they'd run by and just throw a whole bunch at us. They threw out hundreds of picks, and guess how many I caught? 0. James took off one of his armbands and he like wiped sweat off of his face and I think his armpits, and then he pretended to wipe his butt, and then he threw it behind him almost like a bride would at their wedding with a bouquet, and people just tore at it and somebody ended up with it. But I thought it'd be funny to catch that, just kind of be like, whoa, and then be like, ooh. Now, as we walk into the staging area, I felt like a grizzled old veteran just because I was there yesterday and I knew what to expect. But it was really cool to see my nephew get so excited about all this stuff for the first time. So we walked down, and by the way, Ice Nine Kills is playing. I never really heard them too much before, maybe 1 or 2 songs, so I didn't really know what to expect. So my nephew and I went right to the pit section, and his eyes got huge. He's like, I can't believe we're down here in the middle of the stage. And I look around, and I'm watching Ice Nine Kills, and they seem so young compared to all the other bands that have been playing the last couple days. And they had this horror theme. I never knew that they were like this, but it was really exciting because I'm a huge horror fan. So to see them reenact movie scenes and have all these cool special effects and have like zombies walking around, I thought that was sweet. All I could think about was Five Finger Death Punch was next. So Ice Nine Kills is like the teens, then Five Fingers like the uncles, the cool uncles, and then Metallica was going to be like the dads come out to rock at the very end. Something that stuck with me is their drum beats are so intense. And if you watch the drummer, first of all, he looks like somebody's younger brother or something that's just tagging along. He's just so relaxed, and he's playing these insane beats without breaking a sweat. It was pretty impressive. I was really enjoying their set, but I kept thinking these guys would kill it on like a normal stage where I could really watch the entire production versus having to look in a circle the whole time and try to see what's going on. The next band up was Five Finger Death Punch. They're one of those bands that I've always liked whenever I hear them, but I never really got into them. We're walking back to the snake pit area, but as we're coming down the stairs, I remember feeling the kick drum from the drummer. I don't know if his kick drums are triggered or something, but I was getting this intense like pounding on my chest as I was walking down the stairs. It felt like I was having palpitations or something. So we're getting closer to the stage. I'm holding 2 waters, and all of a sudden I feel something sharp hit my face. I look up, and the guy from Five Finger Death Punch had thrown out a guitar pick. And I laughed because I thought about the other night how I was trying so hard to catch a Metallica pick, even though they were throwing out hundreds. And here I am with both my hands occupied, and I get hit right in the face with one. So we go back to the snake pit, and I'm watching the band. I don't know many of their songs. I knew like one of them, I think. But the craziest thing is it didn't really matter because the band was very entertaining. Their bass player had this gigantic beard. He looked like the octopus guy in one of the pirate movies. And every time he'd go to like headbang, he wouldn't really headbang because he had a shaved head, but he would what I call beard bang. So I thought that could be a new trend. That's another tidbit, by the way. I noticed how ironic it was that both nights I tried to find somebody headbanging and I never saw anybody. Nobody in the snake pit, nobody on general admission, maybe up in the stands. But back in the day when you heard Metallica, the first thing you would do was headbang. I just saw no headbanging. It was weird. Some beard banging though, like I said. The singer for Five Finger Death Punch was really good with the crowd, very interactive. I mean, he even got down onto his stomach to reach down to hand things to the crowd. So he started taking off bracelets. He was giving people anything he could. He even ripped like something off of his pants. I think it was like an elastic strap or something. Pulls it off and he gives it to somebody. And I kept thinking, at this rate, the guy's going to be naked by the end of the set. You know, okay, here's my G-string. Not that he wears one, but you never know. So there we are, all standing in the snake pit after Five Finger, waiting for Metallica. And this didn't happen the night before. It's actually 2 nights before because they took the middle day off. So on Friday, nobody did this, but on Sunday, they started to do the wave. And it was the coolest thing because, first of all, the wave is goofy, right? Just humans are weird. We'll just start doing the wave whenever we get in huge groups. But in addition to the wave, there's a new thing that I never saw before. People were taking out their cell phones and turning on the lights and holding them up. And when they stood up, you would see this wave of lights go like this. I decided for some of my subscribers to live stream the first song. A lot of them say thank you. You know, I never got a chance to see Metallica, so this is cool. But once again, I really didn't feel present. But I was asking my nephew what he thought they were going to start with. And I so far have been 2 for 2. With Pantera, I thought a new level. With the first day of Metallica, I said Creeping Death. I guessed that they were going to start with Lux Eterna, and that was kind of a stupid thing for me to think, but I was just feeling it. I was wrong. They started with Whiplash, which was pretty badass to hear them play once again a really old song off of Kill 'Em All first. One thing I noticed right away is James Hetfield seemed to be a lot happier at this concert. He even admitted it Friday real quick in the middle of the set. He said something like, I was kind of grumpy when we started, but after playing a few songs, you know, I'm back. But you could tell Sunday it seemed like he was well rested or something. He was smiling just like all the guys were, and I kept thinking how different it is if you go back and watch really early Metallica. When they drank a lot, they all seemed a lot more serious, kind of ironically. Then they kicked into For Whom the Bell Tolls, Ride the Lightning, and then Until It Sleeps. The cool part of the double show idea is that they never repeated a song. Then they played Lux Eterna, and live that song kicks ass because of all the kick drums. Now this time, Kirk and Rob did some crazy stuff. I thought they were just going to do that song they did before, but they stayed true to what they said. No repeat sets. You'll never guess in a million years what Kirk Hammett ended up playing. He actually ended up singing a theme song for Mary Tyler Moore. I think he wanted to do something local, kind of like a long time ago they did a Prince tune together. So here we have Kirk Hammett singing You're Gonna Make It After All. And everybody was kind of cringing, you know, and even Kirk was laughing. He wasn't taking it seriously at all. And then Robert brought up Ozzy, and everybody went crazy, and they actually did a version of Over the Mountain. I was dying to just jump on Lars's kit and just start jamming along with them, but of course I'd end up in jail if I did that. But you know what? I bet you the crowd will go crazy as they're dragging me off of the drum kit. It might be worth it, actually. No, I'm just kidding. I have to admit, Kirk rocked the solo. You know, he did Randy Rhoads proud for the Over the Mountain solo. It's not an easy solo at all. Right after that, the drum set popped up right next to us, and I got chills. I'm like, Lars is going to be right there. I couldn't believe the footage I was getting. Sometimes the whole band would congregate together right in front of us. And it was just like this holy moment for me. You know, ever since I was a kid, I've pretty much worshipped Metallica. And now they're right in front of me, and I'm trying to both be present, but also capture what I was seeing in front of me. They played The Day That Never Comes, which sounded great live, and then they kicked into Wherever I May Roam. And they kept doing these really great intros, so they had visuals as well as really cool, ominous-sounding background music. For Wherever I May Roam, it was kind of obvious because you could hear like the sitar-like guitar sound. And it was this song that Rob did the platform surf once again. I know they started playing this live again, but you know, they kicked into Call of Cthulhu, and it was kind of a surprise. I didn't think they were going to play it at this show, but it was great because there's a lot of subtle, soft moments where you could take a breath, and then it gets really intense, and that's when the band got all together again. And I believe they dedicated that one to Cliff as well. Now, some of the time, Lars would be facing away from us, and you could see the little habits that he has. I noticed that he would drum, and he would grab his shirt and lift it up a lot. I wasn't sure why. I thought maybe he's drying off his hand because that's the hand that hits the snare all the time. So, you know, when you play, you develop these weird little habits. That's his. He lifts his shirt up a lot. Now, being that close is great, but it also causes some audio issues. We're really close to Lars. I can hear every hit that he's doing. But when they played The Unforgiven, there was kind of like a latency happening. Because you'd hear the drums first because they were so close to you, but then you'd hear all the other instruments. So it kind of sounded off, almost like Lars was drunk or something. That was the most apparent on Unforgiven. I think that's because it was more of a ballad, but when they played faster, it really wasn't as bad. During Inamorata, it was funny because people were trying to start a pit, but it was this innocent little playful pit, and it actually ended up being more like people trying to square dance. After the tune, Lars turns around and points right at me and looks at me with huge eyes. I thought he recognized me, you know, just my ego tells me that maybe he caught one of my videos about him in the past. That'd be so awesome. But then the guy next to me claims that it was him that he was pointing at, so I guess we'll never know. You know, when you see a concert, and even if you're really far away, you think, God, I think Taylor Swift just winked at me. I freaked out when they kicked into Battery. I got some really good footage. I really wanted to get close to his picking hand to get all the details, I guess. But that one gave me chills. You know, hearing the end of Battery, you know, when the beat goes to the thrash beat, and just the energy that the band felt at that moment was incredible. Now, I have a feeling Moth into a Flame is a little bit of a cursed song from Metallica. First of all, that whole Lady Gaga debacle that happened where James's mic wasn't working. But starting it off, I guess Lars is supposed to hit 8 counts, which he did. But James came in after 4. So there was like this weird moment on stage where it was chaotic, and all of a sudden James is like,
"Everyone count to 8 with Lars. Go sit down, count to 8, we'll come in, all right?" No, Kirk didn't fuck it up. I fucked it up.
But the craziest part is in that song is where they did the pyrotechnics. So right away after the count, they play a little riff and then bam, they hit the flames once again, just like they did for Fuel on the other concert. So I'm picturing the pyrotech getting ready and watching Lars count off and then hearing chaos and not knowing whether to like actually hit the button or not. Luckily, they did not do that because then they started over and did it right. And the pyro went off right at the right time. But that must have been a really intense moment for that person. I loved how a lot of the times you could see the band members, even if they were clear across the stage, look over at Lars to see when he was going to hit something. In a world that we live in now where a lot of things are programmed, quantized, auto-tuned, played to a grid, click tracks, all that kind of stuff, it was really cool to see an organic situation where James looks over it and they're like, bam, and they hit together. Towards the end, all the balls dropped once again, and I tried to keep it a secret from my nephew because I wanted him to be surprised, and he was, you know, he felt like I did the other day where you're like, what is this? Now, this time, it was a weird ball situation where a lot of them just got stuck up on the stage because everybody in the crowd just kind of hits it back, but they surrounded Rob, and he looked kind of annoyed because he'd try to sing, and all of a sudden the ball would hit the microphone or his bass or something, and I thought, this has to make his job so much harder. Now, at the end, all I wanted to do was get a pick for my nephew. So Kirk went by and he threw a bunch of picks. I missed every single one once again. But all of a sudden I looked down because Kirk did one last toss of picks. I looked down and I saw one. And I knelt down and I grabbed it as fast as possible and I sort of hid it in my hand. And I acted like I didn't get one. You know, with my nephew, he tried to, he didn't get one. I'm like, oh, that sucks. Ta-da! He was real excited to get it because he's going to take his wristband and the pick and a picture of the concert and make like a framed memorabilia piece out of it or something. The band gets done, and like they did at the previous concert, they all congregated to the middle and they bowed, you know, basically. I don't think they ever really bowed. They just kind of stand there. And then they turned around and the crowd's going nuts. And I felt a little bit emotional because every time I see Metallica live, this sounds bad, but I always wonder if it's going to be the last time. So I tried to take it in as much as possible, even though I was filming. You know, I wanted to capture it because it might have been the last time. Who knows? I hope not. And they each took turns on the microphone, thanking the crowd and everything. So it gave it a personal touch. I thought that was a good move. As we walked out, reality hit my body, and I realized that I had been standing for 13 hours the past 4 days. We had to work our way through the crowd, get to the truck, and we ended up sitting in my Jeep for 30 minutes straight, maybe even a little bit more. I asked my nephew, he's like, I think it was longer than that. We didn't move at all. Like the line of cars were just stopped. And then finally, after I'd say maybe 40 minutes, we started to move. And it took forever to get out of the ramp. And then we finally made it out of there. But the whole time we were in there, we weren't really bumming out because we had just experienced something so awesome. And we were kind of having that afterglow effect. And it was cool to talk to my nephew about all his favorite parts of the concert. By the way, the day before the concert, he and I did a podcast together. So it was before we went to the concert. So we're not going to be able to talk about it on the podcast. But we discussed a lot of other stuff. So keep an eye out for that podcast. It'll probably come out in a couple days. Okay, everyone. So that was my experience with the 2 Metallica concerts in 3 days. Hopefully you were able to kind of feel like you were there with me. And if you were at the show, though, let me know in the comments section what your experience was. I just love doing these because it really makes me go back and relive it. It's like I get to see it all over again in my mind. Okay, everyone. We'll catch you later. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the podcast most likely next. Okay, bye-bye.